Hey everybody, welcome into the week 2 waiver wire live stream. It is me, Dan Harris. It is her, Lauren Carpenter, and the two of us are going to be here each and every week on Tuesday, guiding you through the perils of the waiver wire. Lauren, how is your week 1 generally? How are you feeling? It was so great to have football back.
Oh my gosh, week one. First of all, fantasy news. I did pretty well in all my leagues. I'm like above 500, but y'all don't care about that. I was pleased because all of the research that we did going into the offseason, heading into week one, I gave some pretty solid advice. Also, some that weren't so good. Thank you very much, Aaron Rodgers, for ruining my life. That's fine. But yeah, it was really good. Like what a crazy explosive week one. That was
And,
so nuts. Even last night's game, it was like mind blowing.
and yeah, last night was fantastic, by the way, watching
Yeah.
it. There were like 7 different points where I said, all right, this game's salted, the Raiders have it. This game's salted, the Ravens have it. It was just nuts. I as well perhaps misled the occasional person asking a question with a start Brandon Ayuk under all circumstances. That
Me
was not
too.
great. It was weird. Let's set it out in the outset. We're going to talk about our waiver wire, pickups. Ask questions if you want in the chat. By the way, you have to be a subscriber to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/FantasyPros, which you are watching. If you want to ask a question, give us a little like on the video right now. That would be great. That really helps us out. But again, subscribing, click the little notifications bell. That's the easiest way to be notified whenever we do any of these things. So like I said, we're going to be here every single Tuesday. Me and Lauren, you're lucky to have her, not as much lucky to have me. But regardless, we're going to be giving you our waiver wire takes. Now, here's my caveat, Lauren. Tell me if you agree with this. If what happened this weekend happened in like week 9 or something of the NFL season, we would not be reacting and fantasy managers would not be reacting the way they are. I feel like week 1, the overreaction central is just out there in full effect. Don't you think?
Oh, it's absolutely insane. And week one is always weird. If there's a normal week one, that's weird. So the weirdness of week one is very normal. So don't overreact. Don't put too much into some weird things that just are not consistent with what we know about certain players. But absolutely.
All right, so let's get into it. Everybody wants to know overall, forget position by position. We'll go through that in a little bit, but let's just start overall. Lauren, you are making your waiver wire claims. Who is your number 1 pickup of the week?
Oh, okay. I have three, but I will put them in order depending on what it is that I need. Elijah Mitchell is going
Sure.
to be huge atop of that list. My wide receiver will be Sterling Shepard, also known as Daniel Jones' security blanket. Possibly you could refer to as Binky, although I think security blanket might be a little bit more, I don't know, PC than to call him a Binky. He may not appreciate that one very much. And I'm going after Jameis Winston. Wow. Hi. Welcome back to the NFL. Well done. Yeah.
Okay, let's break it down. Let's start with Elijah Mitchell. So
Let's do it.
that is the guy. Okay, we know Raheem Mostert. Obviously, you have the surprise inactive coming in here with Trey Sermon. Raheem Mostert vaults up everybody's rankings right before it locks, and then you've got Raheem Mostert 2 for 20, injures his knee. He has chipped cartilage or something or other in his knee right now.
Yeah.
That is going to keep him out for probably about 8 weeks, is the
Mm-hmm.
estimate. So we have Elijah Mitchell. He comes in, he rumbles for 104 yards and the touchdown. But what the heck, man? I mean, nobody was drafting Elijah Mitchell. We were all drafting Trey Sermon, and he's inactive. So what do you expect? I agree with you, by the way. He's my number 1 waiver wire pickup
Mm-hmm.
as well, because I think he is the guy who has the potential, at least, to make a real impact going forward. But what do we make of the San Francisco running back situation right now?
Well, what you should do is go back to historically speaking when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers and Kyle Shanahan and understand that these are what we call Kyle Shanahanigans, whatever the heck you want
Oh,
to call
you
it.
nailed it.
Yeah, not really, but thank you. So that's just an issue that always happens. And, we had, spoke earlier about Brandon Ayuk. So I don't know what his comments were at the end of it, other than just to try to light a fire under his tuchus. But this does not, I went through like a phase of surprises during this game. It was like, Trey Sermon, inactive, real surprise face. And then it was Raheem Mostert, hurt. Surprised face. And then it was Elijah Mitchell. Who is this? Surprise face. There was a lot of things going on here that were odd. But then again, at the end of the day, when you think about it, when it comes to this team, this really isn't all that shocking. So the way that I'm approaching this moving forward is that this is going to be, I want to call it in air quotes, a committee backfield.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way Kyle Shanahan likes to run these types of running backs, which he is very good at producing top level running backs, you could be me or like my dog as the running back, and you will be fantasy productive. That is how Kyle Shanahan works. So I want a piece of that. The one piece I know that can be more readily available, possibly than Trey Sermon, is going to be Elijah Mitchell. Now, just go under the expectation and the assumption that he is not going to be like a Derrick Henry RB1 here. They are going to be splitting carries throughout the game, and then you will have some games where it's all Elijah Mitchell who's getting the touchdowns and getting the looks, and then it's going to be all Trey Sermon who's getting all of that. Then it could be someone else that they randomly pick up and start, and then he has a blow-up game. These are things you have to understand moving forward. But one of the things that is keeping me on the Elijah Mitchell train is the fact that they use running backs, and I know he's going to be on the field. So that is that piece that I want coming out of that.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think we were drafting Raheem Mostert and we were drafting Trey Sermon with the understanding that it was going to largely be a committee between them throughout for as long as Mostert were healthy. And both were still desirable commodities in this point. So maybe Elijah Mitchell, who really didn't have a great preseason, like he didn't look good in the preseason games. He looked much more like a special teams player. He's not going to be the talent that Raheem Mostert is because talked about it a lot with Joe Pisapia. Joe doesn't think, obviously he's had a lengthy career and he hasn't gotten that much work. I think that's more because of injury. I think Mostert is a very talented back, but even if Mitchell can't match his talent, you're absolutely right. Like it is going to be both of them. I don't know what was happening in this week 1 game. I think maybe Shanahan thought that they would win it pretty easily. And so they didn't need to sort of, mess with Trey Sermon or something like that. But I agree with you. He's my number 1 pickup. And Mitchell strikes me as a guy, Lauren, because we have obviously with Trey Sermon too. I think you probably will be able to start up. I mean, the schedule isn't elite, right? They're at Philadelphia. Philly's defense looked pretty strong. They have a decent defensive line. Green Bay, you can exploit on the ground for sure. Seattle's okay. Arizona, you can exploit. So not the worst schedule. And I think you're probably going to be able to start Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon going forward, generally speaking, as low-end RB2s, high-end flexes. Do you think that sounds about right?
I think it does. And I actually wouldn't mind bumping them up to maybe a high-end RB2. And the reason I say this is this reminds me very much, speaking of the same game on the other side of the ball, it reminds me a lot of what we saw with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, minus slight different identity looks. But those were 2 running backs that were valuable and fantasy productive together on the field. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be the exact same situation in San Francisco, but I don't have any problem starting both of those guys. I don't. Until I'm proven otherwise and until something happens, it's that volume and they're on the field. So
yep. I think San Francisco could choose the 2 of us and make us their starting running backs, and we would probably be valuable fantasy commodities.
I mean, I work out though. Do you? I mean,
no, actually, I do negative stuff just because I don't want to risk pulling something accidentally when I get out of this chair or something. But I will say, look, by the way, if you're asking questions, thank you. We've got almost 2,000 people watching right now. Wow. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Again, please subscribe. Please like the video. Yes. But I will say we will get to questions, by the way, so keep adding them in. For right now, Alejandro Torres is asking, would you swap out and drop Chase Edmonds from the Cardinals, who had a very nice, actually, opening game, so this sounds crazy to me, for Elijah Mitchell if you needed him?
Okay, so I don't necessarily think if you need Elijah Mitchell here because you have Chase Edmonds, and this sounds like kind of the same type of swap. So I think this might be getting a little bit too excited about what we saw out of Elijah Mitchell and expecting the same production week in and week out. I'm not really sure that you can do that in that situation with the 49ers, whereas you know what to expect out of Chase Edmonds with the ability to have a little bit higher upside. But for me, I would keep Chase Edmonds in that situation, and I wouldn't want to get rid of that piece.
I am in 100% agreement with you. One other question on Elijah Mitchell. Ian Smith asked, would you drop A.J. Dillon to add Elijah Mitchell?
I would do that. The only reason why is because it's early. A.J. Dillon did get a little bit of work here, but I don't want you to be dropping A.J. Dillon because of the freakish game that we saw out of Green Bay. That is not going to be the same moving forward. But if you do need a piece that will likely have more fantasy points than A.J. Dillon, and you really have to have some depth that you can start, then I would get Elijah Mitchell in that case. If you do not absolutely need to have him, then hang on to A.J. Dillon because he could see some pretty good opportunity later in the season. So it's a tough one, but if you absolutely have to have a starting running back that is going to get you at least some points, I might go Mitchell here.
Yeah, I don't want to do that, but I agree with you that in the short term, though, I think you're right. I mean, I think you're right. I think Elijah Mitchell is going to have more value in the short term than we're going to see from A.J. Dillon, but I try to find somebody else if I could. Let's get to your number 2, who you mentioned, which was Sterling Shepard. Now, this is interesting to me, Lauren. I want you to make the case for Shepard because on our Waiver Wire podcast that I did yesterday with Joe and Yates, Yates also had Sterling Shepard pretty high. I like a lot of wide receivers this week, including Sterling Shepard, but he wasn't one of my top wide receiver pickups. So make the case here as Shepard for the pickup.
Like I said, security blanket, binky. Okay, even if the offense for the Giants is just mediocre, if they're blah, Sterling Shepard is going to get the looks. He had 9 targets, I believe. Let me just make sure I got that right. Yes, 9 targets, 7 receptions, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. Okay, this is not just a fluke. Sterling Shepard is that guy for Daniel Jones, who he's going to be looking for because Daniel Jones is going to be scrambling for his life as the pocket collapses around him, as they're limiting Saquon Barkley, whatever it is they're doing with him. So he needs someone to dump it off. He needs someone trustworthy in those short yards, which he's perpetually bad at. So he needs someone that he can trust. That is Sterling Shepard. He proved that to me. Darius Slayton is going to be that wide receiver 3. He's going to be a shot in the dark upside guy for you. And Kenny Golladay is going to be that big play potential on those contested catches that Daniel Jones is a little bit more known for. But Sterling Shepard is going to be your guy no matter what. If they're playing well, it's going to be Sterling Shepard that's seeing all the volume. If they're playing poorly, it's going to be Sterling Shepard getting all the volume. If the pocket is collapsing and Daniel Jones, God forbid, don't run the football, Daniel Jones. Just don't do it. Just dump it right off to Sterling Shepard. That is why I like him so much, because I can plug him in at my wide receiver 3 spot and I can leave him there because I know unless there's injury, he should be seeing a ton of targets.
Okay, so I will get to my number 1 wide receiver pickup in a second, but we do have a couple of questions here from the chat on Shepard. Number 1 from Mr. Postman.
Hi.
The actual Mr. Postman. Hi. Should I drop Tyler Boyd for Sterling Shepard? Boyd, a disappointing opening game here.
This one is tough because I love Tyler Boyd, but at the end of the day, I would pull the trigger on that and I would get Sterling Shepard here. And it's because I said before, I like the target volume and I also like Sterling Shepard's consistency. We don't have that same situation with Tyler Boyd as much as I do love him. Jamar Chase with Dan and I both said, don't worry about him. He's going to be fine. Showed up in week 1 and balled out, but so did T. Higgins. And it seems like Tyler Boyd is being left out in the shadows. He'll likely have a few good games here or there, but Sterling Shepard is going to give you the consistency that you need.
Another one about Shepard. Corbin Vaughn asked, would you drop week 1, incredible disappointment, Brandon Ayuk to add Sterling Shepard?
That one I would not. Okay, Brandon Ayuk is dealing with a hamstring injury right now that has limited him. Obviously, the 49ers made some very questionable choices heading into week 1. So that's a little random. You want to talk about a weird week 1. That whole situation was strange. Brandon Ayuk is explosive. Deebo Samuel is explosive. But Deebo Samuel is not necessarily known for being sustainable the entire year. So I would hang on to Brandon Ayuk in this. And maybe if you do need to have someone like Sterling Shepard, see if there's somebody else that you could maybe drop. Also, everybody, I get this question a lot. Don't have 2 defenses, for crying out loud. Drop one of your defenses and drop one of your kickers if you have more than 2. Like more than 1.
There are a lot of 2 defense questions. Yes.
I do.
Cycle them through every time. So Here's what I will say. I like Sterling Shepard, and I think that you make a lot of valid points. I do wonder what it is going to look like, this Giants offense, when you have Kenny Golladay at full strength, when Evan Ingram is active from his calf injury, when Saquon Barkley continues to improve as he will over the course of the season. I just don't know how the targets are going to break out. But you are right that Sterling Shepard has been pretty much an undervalued fantasy asset. I used to talk about it with tags all the time for years at this point. Nobody ever, he basically has 6 targets every single game. That is something that is desirable. Now, I will raise something. I know a lot of people are asking for fab percentages or fab bids, so we'll talk about that in a second. I will say that my number 1 wide receiver on the weekend is Tim Patrick. You've got Jerry Jeudy. Tim Patrick, I'm a Tim Patrick fan. I was last year. Tim Patrick, obviously, you've got Jerry Jeudy out 4 to 6 weeks with the high ankle sprain. Let's hope he's back. It looked grotesque. Happy that it's just a high ankle sprain. Tim Patrick was running routes even before Jerry Jeudy went out. Even in 2 wide receiver sets, he was basically splitting time. We saw how good Jeudy was. We saw Cortland Sutton being worked into the offense. Patrick comes in there, and I know in practice there was a report today that KJ Hamler is running with the 2s. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be Tim Patrick, 39 yards and a touchdown. He's not explosive. His name is boring, but he is a guy who I think will produce for you each and every week so long as Jerry Jeudy is out, and especially when you've got the next two matchups where they have Jacksonville and the Jets, two secondaries that can't stop anybody. So what are your thoughts here on Tim Patrick, who's my number one wide receiver?
Yeah, see, my 1A, 1B is Sterling Shepard and
Okay.
Tim Patrick. And the only reason why Sterling Shepard has that A tag over Tim Patrick, who I absolutely adore, is simply because of the target volume. That was it. That was it.
Yep.
Sterling Shepard saw a lot more targets. I think Tim Patrick only had 5. Sterling Shepard had 9, even though he was 5 for 5, I believe, right? He was 100% catch rate in that game. But when you're looking immediately ahead, you guys, Jacksonville made Tyrod Taylor look like Tom Brady. So I really like this matchup for the Broncos heading into week 2. So I like that a lot. But again, it was such a fine splitting hairs with a hatchet, as I like to say,
My favorite.
fine thing between Tim Patrick and Sterling Shepard. And it really just boiled down to the targets. That's it.
Okay. So let's talk about people in fab leagues. Lauren, I don't know how many fab leagues you play in, but a lot of people are saying, what do I bid for Elijah Mitchell? You've got Jordan Jackson actually saying, I had Raheem Mostert, I lost him. What do I bid in that situation for Elijah Mitchell? I put out a number yesterday, Lauren. It was aggressive. It was more aggressive than the guys on the podcast. It was 30% of my fab budget because I do think Mitchell is a guy who makes a huge impact. What about you? What would you be willing to spend?
I am actually going to go a little bit more aggressive than you. I would cap out at 40% of your fab. And fab is very much like trade questions, everybody, because I don't know your needs. I also don't know your league, because if you have a very aggressive league or you have someone in there that's just going to blow their fab budget, but you really want to have this guy, we don't know those kinds of tricky things about your specific league or about your specific needs. So if you have running back depth, but you lost Mostert, but you need someone else at a different position, then don't do that. But if you really have to have a starting running back that you need to rely on every single week, then go ahead and push that maybe up to 40%. That's really based on your own roster construction. But 30 to 40% is something I'm not shying away from.
And Brooks asked, Dan and Lauren, please help me drop one of Tyson Williams, Laviska Shenault, or Jacoby Myers to pick up Elijah Mitchell. Is that a line that you would cross and drop one of those guys for Mitchell?
Ouch. Okay. I would not drop Tyson Williams just yet. I keep that one. That's not even a question. I love Jacoby Myers. If I had to make a choice here, I might drop Laviska Shenault. But that I wouldn't like doing it. I'd be like, ouch, and cry a little bit. But if you absolutely had to have Elijah Mitchell, that's the one I might let go of.
It's right on the borderline for me. I really don't want to drop any of them. But again, it really depends on your situation. As you said, Lauren, if you're desperate for a running back, and maybe you're not because you have Tyson Williams, you probably have better ones as well. Maybe you don't need
and
to
don't
make
be worried about Le'Veon Bell and Devonta Freeman with Tyson Williams just yet. That is something we don't know. Also, don't be worried about Latavius Murray, obviously, as we
what's
saw
funny
last
is
night.
I am worried about Latavius Murray.
Why?
I do think that I think that the two of them are going to make the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards split kind of going forward, which I think
That's
Tyson
true.
Williams will have plenty of value still with that. But look, you saw Murray last night. I think he had more total carries even than Tyson Williams. So I think they're going to split.
Williams looked better.
Tyson Williams, I liked how he looked for sure. He scored the touchdown, of course. I am going to rank him strong. I think he's a guy you can start each and every week as the running back for the Ravens. But I do think Latavius is going to take Le'Veon Bell, whatevs, and, Devonta Freeman, forget it. Total afterthought. Okay, and what about for the wide receivers, Lauren? These guys strike me as guys I want to add, but not like break the bank sort of guys for the Sterling Shepards and the Tim Patricks.
Again, this is going to boil down to what your needs are for your specific team, but I do agree with you. Wide receivers are very, very deep, okay? It is the one position that you can at least semi-rely on waiver wire Tuesdays and Wednesdays, that there's going to be some availability from these guys, whereas the wide receivers, the running backs fall off of the cliff, especially tight ends fall off of a cliff. So you should prioritize your fab budget more on running backs when you need them and less so on the wide receivers. Now, with that being said, if you lost someone like Jerry Jeudy, maybe you lost to Michael Gallup because he has an injury as well, then maybe you want to push that up a little bit more. But yes, when you're looking at that fab budget, if you need a running back, prioritize that over your wide receivers. But don't forget, it's going to be totally based on your roster and your needs and your league.
I will point out that a bunch of people in the comments are correctly pointing out that Tyson Williams did struggle a bit in pass protection yesterday. But
That's true.
Again, But regardless, I do think that, and I do think Latavius is going to factor in. But either way, I don't think that is the death knell for him because he looked good running the ball. Was not expected to be in this role. I think that's something that he can develop into and make an impact in that game. So for me, I still have them as sort of the 1A, 1B. I do think Latavius Murray, though, is going to be a thing. And both of them are going to be guys that you can start probably each and every week. Okay, you mentioned a quarterback. Let's get to the quarterback. It was Jameis Winston. Talk to me about Jameis Winston now.
Hi, welcome back. I will never put you on my bench ever again, Jameis Winston. I am very sorry. I started Justin Herbert over Jameis Winston, and I was kicking myself the entire time. He looked great, and I am really glad that he technically still doesn't have an interception on the
That's
2021
right.
season,
Yes.
which also kind of wasn't his fault either. But yeah, he looked great, and I like this. And what I liked about this so much is what he did after these plays. He wasn't being obnoxious. He wasn't being, 2000, 18 Jameis Winston, 2017 Jameis Winston eating the W. He was very poised. He was very mature. He looked completely different in the pocket. He's the real deal this year. He will probably make mistakes. That does happen. Look at Aaron Rodgers. But I like it. I like it, and I think you should get him. I actually drafted him in a lot of leagues as like my last pick, just in case, and I'm glad that I did because he's going to be a spicy one that everyone's picking up off waivers.
Do you think that he's somebody who can start for you in like a single quarterback 12-team league, or is he just like a high-end back? Yes, so that's where you're at with him then.
That's where I'm at with him. And the reason I say this is because he has already shown that he can get it done without Michael Thomas. So that is not worrying me that he's going to eventually get better. He's already quite good. So I like him not only before Jameis Winston was all about the ceiling, right? And not necessarily a safe floor. He's kind of shown that he can have a decent floor for you with tremendous upside. So yeah, I don't have any problem starting him in a single quarterback league.
So I think you add Winston regardless because I think even if you have a strong quarterback situation, I do think that it's somebody with his upside is absolutely there. And again, he only threw for whatever was 148 yards with the touchdowns, but their defense taking a lot of hits from that game, that a lot of injuries. So they'll probably need more points coming forward, although they are facing a couple of sort of, New England, the Giants, Washington. There's not going to be a ton of points in those games necessarily. I'm not quite as high as you. Like, I don't want to start him in a single quarterback league, but we do have people asking, would you prefer from Jonathan Simons, Winston or Burrow going forward?
Winston. I would take Winston.
Would you drop Tannehill for Winston?
Oi! That is so hard. I would not do that. As much as I like the ceiling of Jameis Winston, I like the consistency from Tannehill. I say that with tremendous air quotes after another very odd week 1 performance. But that is so hard. I think I would stick with Tannehill here, and then I would find other positions to go ahead and find that high ceiling as opposed to using it at the quarterback position.
Yeah, again, Jameis is a guy to add for me, but I think I probably still have him behind those guys, including Burrow, who I was impressed by the way.
He did well.
For the first game, I thought he would struggle, at least from the mental standpoint of getting rushed and everything like that. All right, so let's talk about a couple of other guys here, Lauren. Let's go by position, if that's cool with you at this point. I will just throw out a couple of guys. So I didn't realize that Tony Jones Jr., who basically took over for Latavius Murray with the Saints, is so widely available in our My Playbook where people import their teams, which you should check out, by the way, My Playbook from FantasyPros.
It's amazing.
Thank you. Autopilot, by the way, that is something I want to say. And I am somebody who's on camera basically from 10 a.m. to lock. That will automatically autopilot in My Playbook will set your lineup, your optimal lineup for you, even if you do nothing if you sign up for it. So it's very cool. But in those leagues, Lauren, only Tony Jones Jr., only 18.9% roster, which I found kind of weird because we were drafting Latavius Murray everywhere. So Tony Jones Jr., Kenneth Gainwell, obviously a very nice day here for the Eagles, gets involved a little bit more than expected. Mark Ingram somehow comes away with 26 carries in that game. Carlos Hyde looks to be the primary rusher. Tevin Coleman was the lead rusher for the Jets. Are you picking up any of these guys? And if so, which one is your favorite?
Sorry, I just had to cry a little bit over the whole Carlos Hyde, James Robinson thing. Oh,
yes.
My word. Urban. Okay, there's a job that's opened up at USC. Go.
Yeah.
Go.
He looks out, man. He looks
I can't even. So hang on to your James Robinsons just in case that hot experiment just whatever. Okay, So for me, the Tony Jones one is interesting. I've gotten a lot of questions about this because I feel like this is such a vague default answer, but I'm going to say it again. It's going to depend on what your roster needs are because Tony Jones Jr. for me is a semi-productive handcuff situation, insurance policy situation for Alvin Kamara. Okay. So if you have the ability to have that and you don't need a running back that has the potential to score more points than Tony Jones Jr., then go ahead and stick with that. That's fine. But for me, the one that really stood out all four of those, Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Eagles, clued us in just a little bit. Sorry, I have really bad allergies, so I'm itching my nose. I swear I'm not trying to just pick my nose on camera and be like super controversial.
It's fine.
But Nick Sirianni, the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, kind of let slip when he was at a press conference talking about his running backs. And he's like, yeah, Miles Sanders, so great. Kenny Gainwell. And then he like stumbled over Boston Scott's name. So he doesn't refer to him as Kenneth Gainwell. Maybe Kenny doesn't like that. But that kind of said to me a little bit of friendship is going on here. And then when you stumble over Boston Scott's name, clearly Boston Scott is not going to be the one that you're like besties with. So again, the air quotes, everybody, I'm so sorry. It's like in my habit now. So that to me said Kenneth Gainwell is going to be the guy that's going to be assuming the kind of RB2 Boston Scott type of role. And sure enough, in week one, that is what we saw with a touchdown from Kenneth Gainwell. And Miles Sanders also had himself an excellent day. As much as I besmirch him and Joe Mixon, they both had a wonderful week. But I am very intrigued with Kenny Gainwell. I'm impressed with how that offense went. I'm impressed with Jalen Hurts. So for me, I like that offense a little bit better with how they're going to use their RB2. So if you need a running back that is going to have the ability to start maybe as a flex opportunity for you, especially if you run into injuries later down in the season that you need to spot that running back position, for me, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell. If you don't need that, but you, let's say, are the Kamara manager, or you know someone in your league that you despise who's the Kamara manager, and you have the room on your bench to stash Tony Jones, I don't hate that either. It's just going to depend on what it is that you need.
I think I'm a little higher on Tony Jones because I think last year
I feel like I'm really low. So
no, first of all,
I feel like I'm so low on him. Everyone's like, we love him.
No. And when this is the best part is when we do our waiver wire immediately on Monday morning, sometimes Sunday night, we put together the internal waiver wire rankings with me, with Joe, with Pat, and with Yates. And I remember Yates, and we look at it then, when they publish it, we can finally see where each one of us is. And I remember Yates being like, wow, you are high on Tony Jones. I was like, yeah, I'm okay. So I think it's more me being high. And the reason is this: we were drafting Latavius Murray before we got whispers of he could be cut or look what's going on right now. We were drafting him because he gets 8 to 10 touches a game in a good offense. We think he can produce maybe as a low-end flex option with that. And if anything happens to Alvin Kamara, and we saw it last year, Latavius was vaulting into strong RB2 status. So I think the same can be true for Tony Jones Jr. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who immediately I'm probably not going to start necessarily unless I'm in a lot of trouble, but he needs to be rostered pretty much everywhere for both the handcuff ability, but his ability to produce even without that. Gainwell is my number 3, though, who I do like. My big worry is that I don't think there's any circumstance where he gets a full piece of the pie. And I realize it's kind of rare in today's running back landscape anyway. But I think that in the end, even if something happened to Miles Sanders, who did look impressive, partially, I think, because these guys were against Atlanta, but partially, I think
when something happens to Miles
fair enough,
Sanders.
fair enough.
There's a sustainability issue here that I'm looking at as well.
That's what you should be looking at when you're looking at long-term value. And he did vault above Boston Scott, which again I was not expecting when week one started, but there we are. And I do think that Jalen Hurts' presence really opens up running lanes for them. I think it's going to be, incredibly impressive here, what we're going to see from this Eagles team suddenly. But with that said, even if something happened to Miles Sanders, I think you're going to see like freaking Jordan Howard, up from the practice squad or something like that and take, carries away. So I do like Gainwell. I definitely do. I think he should be added. But personally, I prefer Jones. And can I say, are we just passing on the Mark Ingrams, Carlos Hydes, Tevin Coleman's of the world?
Who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Tony Jones Jr., and then my number 3 is Kenneth Gainwell. My number 1 is Elijah Mitchell.
Okay, that's right. Number 1, Elijah
You're
Mitchell.
good. Elijah Mitchell. Sorry.
Please tell me it's Mark Ingram. We're going to fight.
No. Mark Ingram, it's like this. It's like Elijah Mitchell, Tony Jones Jr., Kenneth Gainwell, boom, to the floor, Mark Ingram, Carlos Hyde, and even Tevin Coleman don't want, right? Like, no, I realized that this was crazy what we saw from Ingram, 26 carries. He got the touchdown. Every running back got the touchdown for the Texans somehow, but I assume you really have no interest in these guys, right?
None. It's way too volatile. Nope.
Okay, so let's talk about some other wide receivers. We've talked about Tim Patrick. We have talked about Sterling Shepard. Who else do you want here if you see anybody else that sort of piques your interest?
Okay, so there are a couple things here, and I want to do a caveat on 2 of them if I can. Actually, you know what? Let me let me rewind and I'll go to someone we didn't mention who I also like, who is very Sterling Shepard-esque in the making for me. I just looked back at my notes. That's why I totally just went back on myself
That's
there. But
fine.
Zach Pascal, okay? Stop
Yep.
sleeping on Zach Pascal. I have loved him for years. I think this is the year that he really takes a massive step forward over Paris Campbell. I understand that this is the Michael Pittman show where everyone assumes it's the Michael Pittman show, and he may be the more talented wide receiver, but that doesn't mean that he's going to see all the volume. Carson Wentz needs reliability. He needs someone that he can count on a new team in his comeback redemption year. And it looks like that guy is Zach Pascal. So Pittman, don't drop Pittman. He is going to be a huge, high ceiling player once they start getting that chemistry going and being on the same page. But Zach Pascal is one of those guys that reminds me a lot of Sterling Shepard, that is going to be able to be there for Carson Wentz. He's almost like the wide receiver version of Zach Ertz, where Carson Wentz constantly targeted him and looked for him all the time. I feel like this is Zach Pascal kind of assuming that role for Carson Wentz, and I really, really like that for him. And when I'm looking at the Cardinals side of the ball, I am very torn between these two wide receivers. Christian Kirk had a huge game. He has this chemistry going with Kyler Murray already. I understand that. It's taken a little while for that to happen. I feel like this is week one weirdness. I feel like it's going to be September weirdness because Rondale Moore is still there. He's incredibly talented.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it has to do with Moore getting more up to NFL speed and getting his NFL feet underneath him before he starts usurping that role over Christian Kirk. So if you want to pick up one of these guys for the long term, I'd say go after Moore. If you need a filler at wide receiver that may be able to produce over the next few weeks until that chemistry is created, then I would say go after Christian Kirk. So I don't really have a good right or wrong answer for that one, but those three are very intriguing to me. Very, very intriguing.
Yeah, I like everything you're saying, really, and all three of those guys are up there. Also, I have been a Rondale Moore fan in the draft season. I was saying get him on your bench. I was hoping that he would get a little bit more of the snap share. He only 20 snaps in this game. That's not a ton, but again, what he did with 20 snaps, where he had 5 targets, 4 catches, 68 yards. Imagine what happens, Lauren, when he carves out the bigger role for himself. It's going to be fun to watch a ton. So he's the guy who I'm adding, especially as you said, if you don't need somebody immediately, that is a guy who I want on my roster and I'm going after for sure. I agree with you on Pascal. He is underrated. I will say that they do take on the Rams next week. The Colts do. So that's bad for both.
Upcoming schedule is kind of gnarly, but at the same time, a Sterling Shepard situation, Carson Winston's got to pass it to somebody when they're not running the football. And I think that person's going to be Zach Pascal, but it's going to be risky. So just temper your expectations over the next few weeks.
And I like Michael Pittman like you do as well, but Pascal was getting the the looks and producing, and sometimes you've just got to go there. And I agree on Christian Kirk. It's a little weird, like a little fluky, and he was certainly running behind AJ Green, but it strikes me as it's probably only a matter of time until they realize like AJ Green doesn't give them their best chance to win, and you get a bigger role for Kirk and Rondale Moore as well. Let me name a couple of other players here. Let me know if you want to add them at all. Bryan Edwards obviously started slow yesterday, but came on big towards the end of the game, nearly caught the game-winning touchdown. He was ruled down short. You have Terrace Marshall Jr., who's a guy who I like, who didn't have a huge game in week 1, but he got more targets, more catches than Robbie Anderson. You've got Jalen Reagor, had a very nice game here with the Eagles, caught all 6 of his targets, got heavily involved. Nelson Aguilar looked like the guy, over Jacoby Myers for at least the day in New England. And you even have other guys. Sammy Watkins had a big game yesterday. You've got Gabriel. No, we know what happens in week 1 with Sammy Watkins. I get it. I just want to put it. Some people, Devontae Parker had a nice game. Some people are asking, what about when Will Fuller comes back? What about that one? So anybody else that you think is worth picking up, or are the guys that we've talked about really it?
There is one last one that I am intrigued with that I have loved since last year, Gabriel Davis, Buffalo Bills. There is something about him that he's really starting to take a step forward. And I like his target share. I believe he had 5 targets. He only had 2 receptions. But that just means that when the Bills play better, because they didn't play all that great in week 1, and he starts catching more passes and becomes more reliable for Josh Allen, I think that usage is going to go up. He also has a high ceiling with big playability because Josh Allen looks for him deep if Stephon Diggs is getting double coverage. So I do like Gabriel Davis as well. That's a stash to kind of see what happens for me. I like him for DFS actually too. I think he's a tremendous value. But yeah, Gabriel Davis is that one I would point out. No Sammy Watkins, no receivers from the Raiders. Don't fall for it. It's Derek Carr, y'all. He only has eyes for Darren Waller. Just take a deep breath when it comes to those Raiders wide receivers. I've never understood it. If there is one you want to go after, go Hunter Renfrow, because Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow are the only 2 besties of Derek Carr and Zay
All right.
Jones at the very end of
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah.
That's it.
Zay Jones, it was nice to see. And you heard Derek
Yeah.
Carr's comments after the game was like, oh, that guy works hard. Sorry if you can hear that. That is my dog shaking.
Aw.
Okay. How about let's go to quarterback. Anybody else you want? I mean, there's Tua. Ben Roethlisberger obviously gets Las Vegas coming up. Teddy Bridgewater played well. Mac Jones gets the Jets. Sam Darnold played okay. Tyrod Taylor was pretty good, but he gets Cleveland. Or Taylor Heineke, obviously, if you lost Ryan Fitzpatrick. Any of them have any interest to you other than Jameis Winston?
Okay, Jameis Winston for sure, obviously, as we just said. But if you guys stream the position, try to take a look at Teddy Bridgewater because, like I said before, they're playing Jacksonville, and Jacksonville made Tyrod Taylor look like he should have been a first round overall pick in the draft. So if you guys need a positional option for that, go ahead and hit up Teddy Bridgewater there. But for me, it's going to be either one of those two, and Jameis is going to be more of your long term guy.
Yeah. How about at tight end over here? We've got Gerald Everett, who had an okay game, Juwan Johnson, Cole Kmet, Dalton Schultz, or David Njoku.
Yeah, this is gross. Okay, I will put in, since I'm on the Saints and Jameis Winston train, I am very intrigued with Juwan Johnson. He is a converted wide receiver to tight end, which doesn't necessarily speak great for his ability to be on the field to help with protection. He only saw 12 snaps, I think, or something ridiculously low, and yet he had 2 touchdowns. So his ability to be able to do something with that may mean that he's going to be on the field more. Jameis Winston obviously likes to target him, so I really like that connection. If you have the opportunity or the space, he's someone I am intrigued with either keeping an eye on or stashing him if you need to. Honestly, this is all kind of ew, because Dalton Schultz is going to have that increased workload, I suppose, with Michael Gallup being gone. Gerald Everett is still dealing with, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So there's that, although I am very intrigued by him as well. Cole Kmet is still there with PPR opportunity, but man, tight ends. Am I right?
Yes, the worst.
I don't know what to do with this.
The absolute worst. I'm not really picking up any of these guys. I don't mind Gerald Everett because he was involved somewhat, but it's not a position where I'm going after. All right. Are you ready to answer some questions here?
I am. Let me just throw one running back out that I forgot
Sure.
about, who that's a very interesting commodity here. Speaking of Mac Jones and the Patriots, James White surprised me in that game. He's about 33% rostered, I believe. He only had 4 carries, but he had 7 targets and 6 receptions for 49 yards. It's only a matter of time before one of those is in the end zone. So he is also a very intriguing piece that I'm keeping my eye on. And if I have the room, he might be a stash for me, but maybe a little too early for that yet. But keep your eyes on James White moving forward.
Okay, let's get into some questions. Again, if you want to ask questions here, you have to be a subscriber to our YouTube channel here at youtube.com/fantasypros. We will answer them here. We will try to move at lightning. So let's go. Lauren from Ryan Otero, who do you prefer rest of season, Dallas Goedert or Robert Tonyan?
Dallas Goedert.
I agree with you. Tonyan, I think, needs a lot to go right here for it to happen. From Lukey H, would you drop Mike Davis for Elijah Mitchell?
No. I would keep
Mike
Davis.
I don't know why people are so down on Mike Davis. I understand Atlanta looked terrible. He still had 72 yards or whatever. Okay. From Roman Reister, Jarvis Landry is also on my waivers. Would you prefer Landry to Sterling Shepard or Tim Patrick?
Oh, ouch. Okay. I would stick with Sterling Shepard, Tim Patrick, and then Jarvis Landry. It's the Browns offense for me that is run first, run heavy.
Okay, how about we're getting this a lot. Sorry, I've got to close the polls. Sorry, one sec. All right, that's enough polls there. Okay, all right, this is a question that we've gotten a lot. From Henry Chinaski, are you keeping or dropping Marquez Callaway? Obviously an incredibly disappointing debut, just the 1 catch for 14 yards.
Yeah, we all saw this coming, everybody. Marquez Callaway is your big, deep threat, boomer bust type of player. You should have known that while you drafted him. Hang on to him in case they have a real juicy matchup. But if you need the room, you can drop him.
Okay, a lot of questions coming in about Brandon Ayuk right here. 1233 MRT. What do I do about Brandon Ayuk? So just your general thoughts on him rest of season.
Go ahead and dry your tears, take some stomach medicine, and stop freaking out. It should be fine.
Yeah, I think, when I looked into this a little bit more, it was something where I think he probably wasn't fully recovered from his hamstring injury, and they just wanted to protect him. And I think they thought correctly, it turned out, that they were going to win this game. So they kind of took all these actions to basically, quote unquote, either protect their guys or show them a lesson and stuff like that. How about You agree with that, right? Okay. How
Mm-hmm.
about Maria Padron Rojas? Keep or drop Russell Gage?
Oh god, this is hard. He's one that I can drop if I absolutely have to pick somebody up. Ideally, I would like to stash him if I can, but if you want to drop him, go ahead. Which hurts my soul because I love Russell Gage.
Yeah, I would go ahead and drop if I absolutely had to on this
Yeah,
one. Because again, there's just nothing looked good about it at that point. So,
it was gross.
yeah.
Very gross.
All right. So, let's go for. Oh, a lot of people are asking this question. I can't believe that this is an actual thing. Would you drop from Lukey? But a few people have asked this. Would you drop Aaron Rodgers for Jameis Winston?
No, no.
Yeah, I think this is called an overreaction Sunday, is
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing. So that's what we're doing there. Do not at all. And by the way, Aaron Rodgers is going to go absolutely crazily insane this
Lions.
weekend against Detroit, as he is going to be mad and take everything out on them. From Steve Cotter, is Michael Carter or Tevin Coleman worth holding on to? And which one would you drop if you were dropping one?
Oof. Okay. Considering you're probably not sure who to start anyway, I would hang on to Michael Carter and I would drop Tevin Coleman. But not really. I don't love the Jets backfield, so for me, I'm trying to stay away from that whole hot mess. Dan, what do you think about this one?
As a Jets fan, I can tell you want to stay as far away as possible from this
Okay.
mess. I mean, I was okay with drafting Michael Carter sort of as the long-term play, but I think it's really, really difficult for you to basically, get by and hold this guy the whole year when it's probably going to be until at least midseason before he possibly does anything. The Jets
Mm-hmm.
offensive line is miserable. So I would drop either one or both. I drop Coleman first just because I
Yes.
think the chance is there for Michael Carter long-term, but either way, I don't really think that it's something to do. Mr. Miles asks, if Mike Williams is available, would you prefer to pick up Mike Williams or Elijah Mitchell?
Ooh, Mike Williams is in the wide receiver for the Chargers.
Correct.
This is interesting because this is either going to be your flex play or this is going to be like you need a wide receiver or you need a running back. If it's your flex play, I might go Mike Williams here, but if you
Yeah.
need a running back, you need to get Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, you really need if you're desperate for a running back, because I do think Mitchell is going to provide value, but Mike Williams should be available in 0 leagues after this week. As long
Yes.
as Mike Williams is healthy, they're going to do wonders in that passing game. They have the Cowboys this week. That's going to be a big game for him as well. So, I mean, if you desperately need a running back, I would go Mitchell. Otherwise, I would probably go with Mike Williams. How about from MJH? Do you sell high on Gronk after his giant first week here against the Cowboys?
If you have positional needs, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Gronk is terrible, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in Tampa Bay. So take advantage of that if you have other positional needs like running back or wide receiver.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that
So
if you need to.
there are a bunch of questions about Mike Williams, so I guess he probably was available. But Matt K is asking, if Mike Williams is available, would he rank as the highest available wide receiver on your waiver wire list above Shepard?
That is a good question. I want to say yes and no. Again, positional needs here. He is going to be a home run hitter that is going to get me a tremendously high ceiling, whereas Sterling Shepard is a guy that I can just plug in and not really have to worry too much about the matchups here. So it's going to depend on what it is that you need. 1A, 1B, but two different ways of getting a fantasy score outcome. So if I want a home run guy, I'm going Mike Williams. If I want more consistent floor, I'll go Sterling Shepard.
I'm buying into Mike Williams right now. So I am putting him, if he were available, he would be my number one wide receiver for the week. I really think, again, injuries are probably going to happen just based on the way he plays, right? He goes up and gets that ball. He comes down hard a lot. So he's probably not going to make it through
on
the
Sunday.
season.
And
Yes.
I was like, God, your ribs.
I know.
Oh,
It's just like,
no.
take it easy a little bit. It's
Yeah.
okay to go. But that's the only
Fully
way it goes.
extended. It's like,
Incredible time. And again, against Dallas this weekend, that's going to be good. How about from Chaos? Would you drop Ramondre Stevenson, who we've got this weird situation? He fumbled early, was kind of in the doghouse. Damian Harris looked great. Then Damian Harris fumbled late. There are rumors he could be in the doghouse. So do you drop Ramondre Stevenson to add your guy, Kenny Gainwell?
oh, whew, okay. Yeah, I actually would pull the trigger on this, and that may be a very unpopular opinion, but between Damian Harris and now James White, who's getting involved in the passing game, I think you might get a little bit more production out of Kenneth Gainwell than you would Ramondre Stevenson. Obviously not in Dynasty.
I'm in agreement.
Redraft only.
Well, I'm in agreement with you. I would make that switch. I don't really think Ramondre Stevenson's going to be a thing this year. Damian Harris looked great.
Thank you.
No,
I feel like I'm the
I
only
haven't
one who
understood
said
it.
that.
I
Thank
mean, I
you.
get because
Go team.
you want it to be something where they traded Sony Michel. They must love Ramondre Stevenson as that backup. Maybe they love Damian Harris, and for good reason, because Damian Harris is pretty darn good. So I don't
Hmm.
really think he's going to be a thing. How about what are your thoughts? Roderick Jones wants to know. A guy we didn't really talk about, had an okay first game. I think he had 16 carries. What about James Conner? What are your general thoughts on what we can expect from him this year?
Kind of exactly what we thought going into this from the offseason. This is going to be a very interesting situation between he and Chase Edmonds. Really, what I want to look for is the goal line work, but I don't know if that's going to necessarily remain constant from week to week. So I still see him in a timeshare committee with Chase Edmonds. However, it is a productive timeshare. It's not like he is just going to be on the field as a decoy. He is getting touches. I think as he gets more used to this offense and in the team, I think he's going to see a little bit more work. So kind of how we imagined it was going to go. It's a timeshare between those two. So I don't think you need to drop him. Just kind of have that expectation moving in. Great flex play.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think that the big worry for me with Connor and the reason why he's probably never ever going to rank as an RB2 for me, absent the injury to Edmonds, is because Kyler Murray is going to steal the goal line work when
Yes.
it's there. But I do think to the extent there is a back who factors into that side, it is going to be Connor. And I think that sort of bore itself out this weekend when we
Mm-hmm.
saw it. I will remind everybody again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you haven't liked the live stream, that helps us out as well. Please do so. What about Jamie Stidham is asking, would you keep Mostert and Judy on my roster? Now, assuming you have an IR spot, we can do whatever you want. But what do you think? If you don't, is it worth a bench spot for either one of these guys?
I don't think so. You can keep him until you really need to, and if you have a deep bench, then sure. If there's one person I would do that with, it'd be Jerry Judy. Other than that, no, I don't know if I would because there are other options that can be. I don't want to say just as explosive, but just as explosive as Jerry Judy that you can pick up now. So I don't know if I would take that risk.
I'm not holding Mostert. I mean, it's 8 weeks is the hope. Judy with 4 to 6 weeks, just the guess, as young and in shape as he is, that just looks so
Remember the
ugly.
days? Oh,
I'm expecting. I don't actually. It's been so long. I'm expecting it to be on the farther end of that time frame. At the same time, you saw right off the bat how good this can be for Jerry Judy right now. I would try to hold him in my IR spot, certainly over Mostert if I could. A lot of people
yeah,
asking
IR for
about.
sure.
Yes, if you can, I would definitely do it. A lot of people asking about Will Fuller right now, and not necessarily the impact that it's going to have on Jalen Waddle or Devontae Parker. More, what do we think of Will Fuller? So Dark Maz asks, for example, what are your expectations, generally speaking, for Will Fuller now that he's not going to be suspended anymore?
My expectations are roughly 10 to 12 weeks of him actually being on the field. Boomer bust games, I want to say he'll be fantasy productive 6 to 7 out of that, where he's going to
Mm-hmm.
have a ginormous ceiling. And then the next week you're going to start him and he gets you like point 0.2. That
Yeah.
is Will Fuller. That is how he has rolled. That is his shtick. So understand that moving forward if Will Fuller is someone that you want to target. Incredibly high ceiling, but you never know when it's going to come, and he can give you a goose egg.
I mean, we saw how much better Deshaun Watson was when he had Will Fuller on the field versus when not. I think Will Fuller helps the entire offense just because he stretches the field. I think he will be productive, but I also didn't see anything from Tua that made me think he's suddenly going to be the gunslinger that we're all desperate for him to sort of turn into to see what we can do, going forward. So I think that for the most part, Will Fuller is going to be a guy who you're going to probably start as a, wide receiver 3 most weeks, but I do think it's going to be a little boomer bust, as you were saying here. How about from Terror? Do you drop Zach Moss to pick up Elijah Mitchell?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That not
I,
even a hesitation. Go for it.
what I don't even know what this was, by the way. This was the random, we are just going to deactivate sort of, running backs this week.
He was like
Uh,
the post hype sleeper and then got it's like a healthy scratch. It was like, what?
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So Neems4 is saying, I must have missed all the Trey Sermon talk. I mean, we talked about him generally speaking, but for people coming in late, break down how you feel about just the 49ers backfield going forward for a guy who was basically supposed to be the next big thing and then was randomly inactive in week 1.
Okay, this whole thing with the 49ers was super weird. Raheem Mostert is hurt. That's a commodity that we do know. Other than that, we don't know much when it comes to the 49ers backfield. But we do know that very good running backs come out of the backfield. So I like both Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell, and I would start both of them with confidence and moving forward because obviously he's going to be in week 2 unless there's something really weird going on that we don't know about. But yeah, you can fire up Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell. Don't worry.
I really just think that, and again, it's speculation because who can get in the mind of Kyle Shanahan, that this was a game they expected to win easily. I think they wanted to just take it easy a little bit with Trey Sermon, whether it's sending a message, whether it's not. I think they were like, well, Raheem Mostert may have long-term concerns, but we're banking on the fact that he's not going to get injured 3 seconds into the game. And even if he does, I think we probably have backups who can handle it. With that said, Elijah Mitchell did enough to carve out a role for himself, and they want multiple running backs anyway. So I agree. Both guys are commodities. Sean Knox asks, full PPR, would you trade Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Ezekiel Elliott?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
I think this may lean slightly towards the Ezekiel Elliott side. Almost bordering on a slight lateral move, but I may lean the Zeke side on this because now is the chance to get a hold of Ezekiel Elliott if you really believe in him, because his stock is probably going to be at its lowest right now.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are really upset about Zeke, which is silly. It was week 1 and it was against Tampa Bay. Like you should have expected
one
this
of the
going
best defenses. Yes, absolutely.
Especially against the run. They didn't even try to run. I mean, he had 11 carries, but they basically were just like, we're throwing because we can, and they were effective in it. Zeke is going to be fine. Yeah. I have not moved Zeke down. I'm maybe a spot, but I don't think I've moved Zeke down at all in my rest of season rankings. So certainly prefer him to Edwards-Helaire. Let's go. A lot of people asking about Jared Cook. Actually had a pretty decent game here for the Chargers. So break it down. Some people, Fluffy Kitten, for example, says Jared Cook or Cole Kmet, but I've seen some Jared Cook or Robert Tonyan. What do you think about Cook going forward?
Okay, so I actually do have a soft spot for Jared Cook, and it's mostly because he is filling a void that is an immediate need to be filled, with Hunter Henry now being with the Patriots. And Jared Cook has shown that he can get it done. Now, my only caveat to this is that Jared Cook is boom or bust, but a lot of these tight ends are. But I'm going to rely on Jared Cook with the assumption that there's still Mike Williams, there is still Keenan Allen that's there, there is still Austin Eckler that is there, and I don't think that he's guaranteed to give you points, whereas someone like Cole Kmet, who is seeing a lot of targets, may get you a safer floor, but Jared Cook can give you some pretty high upside because I think he's going to be used in the red zone, which is what Hunter Henry was, and that's where Jared Cook excels because he is incredibly good.
Yeah, Cook surprised me in this one. I do like him.
I've been high on him. I've been really high on him.
Well, you're a better analyst than I am, baby. I would say that. So I would say this. What about people are asking him or Gerald Everett, for example? I assume you'd prefer him to Gerald Everett then.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, that is fine. So we have some people freaking out about Courtland Sutton, who obviously had a very, very quiet game here, even after Jerry Jeudy went out. I think he had 3 targets, 1 catch. I think it was 14 yards. So, I mean, we can say Anthony Burdick will take his question, for example, but a lot of people asking, would you drop Courtland Sutton for, let's say, one of these waiver wire pickups like Elijah Mitchell?
No, don't do that. Don't forget, Courtland Sutton is a year removed from playing football, like at all. So give him a little bit of time. He is a true alpha wide receiver. He just needs a little time to build chemistry with Teddy Bridgewater, get back in shape, get back used to the speed of the NFL. He'll be totally fine. Hang on to him. Don't drop him.
I completely agree with that. There, again, it was a tough matchup anyway with James Bradbury, regardless.
Yes.
So he was just coming back. So that's fine. How about, let me just get a couple on. Okay, so this is a guy I like. We didn't actually talk about him that much, but Matt Howard is asking, would you drop Terrace Marshall for Juwan Johnson to add if you need a tight end?
Okay, I would. And the reason I would is that, especially in Yahoo leagues, he is a wide receiver and a tight end. So if he's going to be used in multiple ways here, that's actually kind of good. But yeah, I think I would make that move. That is someone that I think can have an immediate impact for your team because Jameis Winston has targeted him in the red zone twice.
Yeah, I am holding Terrace Marshall. I think this is a long-term play, but I like the fact that already he's got the 6 targets. He's got the 3 receptions. I'm a little worried about Robbie Anderson. People are asking if they drop, what they do with Robbie Anderson. Anderson will be fine. He obviously caught the touchdown pass, but I'm a little lower on him than I was going forward. From Jaggy Snake, do you like Marquez Valdes-Scantling? Obviously a terrible, terrible game this weekend for the Packers, but going up against Detroit, there was a lot of preseason buzz about him. How do you just generally feel about Marquez Valdes-Scantling, especially in a juicy matchup like this?
I think he's going to be terrible in a juicy matchup, or he's going to do really, really well. I do not like MVS. And the reason why is because when you need him to pull through, when Aaron Rodgers needs him to pull through, he does not. He drops the ball. This was an example that we had against the Saints in week 1 that did not change. And this is a trend that I see from him. And I stay as far away as possible. If there is a Green Bay Packer wide receiver you want to target, not named Devontae Adams, go for Allen Lazard.
Everybody, a lot of people asking start sit questions. My rankings will be up as of late tonight or tomorrow. Hopefully you're in our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. I talk about them all the time. I have an AMA where I ask rankings questions, but we have a start sit live stream on Thursday. We have a ton of stuff on Sunday morning. You will get all those questions answered. So a lot of people still asking about Brandon Ayuk. I understand that they came in late and everything like that. You and I can basically, I think we agree on this. Like, this was frustrating. Maybe we take a little bit of time to gain our confidence back, but for the most part, we are okay with Brandon Ayuk going forward, right?
Hold.
Absolutely. People do not drop him. I'm telling you. I understand it's very frustrating what happened, but I really wouldn't. Some people are asking about Jamison Crowder in terms of dropping him. Like Kyle Nelson say, would you drop Jamison Crowder to pick up Tim Patrick, for example? Is that something that you're doing?
I would. Corey Davis is the favorite of Zach Wilson. That has been obvious since the preseason. It was obvious in week 1. So yeah, that is a move I would definitely make.
Yeah. How about Jeremy Lyles? I think, sorry. Should I hold on to Javonte Williams? Obviously didn't have a terrible game, but he's clearly in a timeshare right now with Melvin Gordon. Gordon had the giant run at the end of the game here. So some people are kind of panicking on what they might see from him. Are you holding him?
Yes, absolutely. Also, don't forget Melvin Gordon looked real fast because the defense was very slow. So don't worry about it. Javonte Williams will be I believe he'll be way more heavily involved as the season progresses. So hang on to him. It was actually very good news to see him as involved as he was. So that just means good things moving forward for Javonte Williams. Don't freak out.
From Joshua Church, any concerns about Najee Harris, or was this just an overall disappointing Steelers game?
It was an overall disappointing Steelers game against the Bills. It is a very classic smash mouth type of rivalry matchup that they have. Don't worry about it. He was on the field for 100% of the snaps. This is volume. This is what we want in fantasy football. Do not worry about Najee Harris.
Yep. I think that the offensive line, unfortunately, stinks, as we kind of expected, but you were right.
We all knew that.
We did know that. He got 100% of the running back touches. That is just rare that you see right now in the NFL. So that, I think, will make up for a lot of the issues that we'll necessarily see. How about some people asking, should I drop Mike Gesicki or Jared Cook, since you're the guy? That is from Alrighty O'Reilly.
Love that name. My cat's name is O'Reilly. Okay. This one is pretty tough, but I would say yes. When it comes to that tight end position, I need something that's going to give me at least some kind of a ceiling. I don't think Gesicki is it. We tried that experiment. It's not working. So I might pivot over here to Jared Cook. It sounds gross saying it, but
it's all right. I mean, I'm very nervous about Gesicki after that. How about Lil Man 26, Higbee or Robert Tonyan?
Ooh, let's go Tonyan.
Yeah, I think that's right. And
let's
go. Last one here. Let's go with Starchy Break. Any thoughts here on Myles Gaskin? Pretty involved throughout the game, dominated the touches, but obviously we did see Malcolm Brown. We did see Savon Ahmed get involved. So any thoughts here on Gaskin?
This is kind of what we figured was going to happen going into this season. So if you were not aware of that, now you are. Myles Gaskin is going to be a fantastic flex play, but make sure that you understand that about Myles Gaskin moving forward. He does not have that kind of ceiling that we really like to see out of some higher ranked running backs, but hang on to him. I have a lot of faith in him. Just understand that there are, there's bumpers that are in the way in the name of Malcolm Brown and Salvon Ahmed.
This is basically what I expected. Borderline RB2, but enough involvement in the passing game to make it worthwhile, especially in half PPR and full PPR leagues. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you like the video. We will be doing this every single Tuesday. We have a start sit live stream on Thursday. We have podcasts going on all week. We have short form videos. We have Sunday morning covered, everything. Make sure you're subscribed. Click the notifications bell so you know when we go live. We appreciate you coming and hanging out with us for an hour. We will talk to you next week personally.